country, because he was the one that actually showed you that you know, as a kid, you could pick up a guitar, play 3 chords, and put a band together. Even I was in the skiffle group, you know, and we all had a shot at it. And they were very simple songs, you know, but you could, with a washboard and a T-chest bass and 3 chords on a guitar, you got a group. And it was, you know, that was the beginning, as I think I said before, of all those bands that later became R&B bands. You know, they were all skifflers. John Lennon and his Quarrymen, you know, and even people like Adam Faith was in a skiffle group when he first started. I think probably Fine Cliff was as well. Last time I doubt it. But Marty Wilde and probably those early rock and roll guys were. Anybody that played an instrument in those days, that later emerged in the 60s, was usually to be found at the age of about 12 in a skiffle group. I remember going to the Tolworth Co-op Hall. I was about 17, and I think it was in my skiffle group, and they had a skiffle group on there. And this 12-year-old kid came on with a guitar twice the size of him and played the arse out of it. And I just went, that's it, I give up. I'm still struggling to master runs on a guitar. But it was Jimmy Page.
Ah. No shit.
We didn't know who he was. I just knew he was some 12-year-old kid, you know, a guitar bigger than he was. Yeah. It turned out to be Jimmy Page.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting. Bill Harry said, he wrote a book called British Invasion, he said that in 10 years England had gone through about 100 years of American popular music, the rate at which they absorbed it. It just seems interesting how keen they were on American.
I think it was just the speed with which the recording industry was developing. You know, and becoming more sophisticated in the distribution of records and printing of records and everything, and the equipment was improving and everything was improving, the sounds were improving. I mean, when I first listened to rock, when I first heard rock and roll, I remember going to the cinema to see Blackboard Jungle in Toll. And it's Bill Haley and the Comets and Rock Around the Clock sounded absolutely amazing. And I went away and I got my 7 and 6 or whatever it was at that time, went down to the record shop, bought the record, pulled it out, put it on my record player, on my little dance set record player. Crap! Where's it gone? You know, I couldn't work it out for ages. And of course it was the size of the speakers and the cinema and the volume at which the thing was played that was so exciting. You know? The sound was there, but there wasn't the equipment at the soft level to you know, the software level didn't have it. So, you know, you played it on your little tiny and it came out like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
The only place you could actually hear rock and roll where it sounded exciting in my youth, which was in the 50s, was at cinemas and fairgrounds. Fairgrounds had huge speakers. You went to the fairground and Buddy Holly would come blasting out and sound absolutely amazing. You know, Chuck Berry, fantastic, and the Dodgers would be flying around and this music. Great, really exciting. And then you go over to your stereogram, just about, it's still not really great, you know. It had to be played loud, you know, and that's what drove parents now. Turn that racket down, you know, it's been this cry immemorial. As soon as you get that from downstairs, you know you're onto a winner.
Yeah.
You know there's something good coming, you know. Something that nobody else understands and only you do. It's happening with rap and it's happened with everything else. It's, heavy metal, everything that's come by it. As soon as the adults subject to it, you know it's coming, you know. I'm here. Can you turn that racket down? I'm writing an interesting thesis on the progression of British pop music. It's there! It's on that goddamn ghetto being carried down the road by a racket. That's what happens.
That's the way it is. Great. I mean, in his book British Invasion, Barry Miles, he says the Beatles, for instance, all these bands had a lasting impact on the actual business in America going on into the 70s, etc. For instance, the Beatles were the first band to play the huge stadium gigs, swiftly followed by Cream and the Stones, and suddenly that's completely the norm everywhere. Huge gigs, festivals.
Well, it is. I think they're in danger of overreaching themselves again now. These things usually blow up to enormous proportions and then implode. What has certainly happened is that the Beatles made their impact by playing Shea Stadium. It was the first time they played a big stadium, but nobody really heard them that well. I mean, if you listen to any of the recordings, the screaming is so loud. The equipment isn't big enough to cope with it. The video screens aren't there. Nothing is there to actually do it. It kind of gave people the idea that because of the adulation and the scream age following, that you could get a big crowd into a much bigger area, and they'd just go not to hear them, but to see them and scream at them.
They excited the businessmen.
Yeah, well, excited the promoters too. I mean, it certainly had an effect upon the business. They realised they could do that. But it wasn't really, I don't think, until the video screens started to arrive on it, they really began to work it out. And even now, it kind of, because of the state of the record industry now and the downloads and computers and everything else, your only way to make money is to get to that level where you can play these huge gigs, and then you make your money from merchandising, sponsorship, TV rights, etc., etc.
Again, the Beatles didn't go so well at first, as you're saying on the phone, but they went crazy with memorabilia.
Oh yeah, and the Beatles lost a fortune because Brian Epstein wasn't sufficiently clued in, didn't have any comparative examples to work on of other people doing the same thing. So he lost about 90% of their merchandising rights by giving it away. We couldn't take less than 10%.
Following that, I mean, you can't move the posters and T-shirts.
Well, they've worked it out now. Just like they've worked music publishing out, of course. I mean, in the old days, you know, the music publishers demanded 50% of the writer's royalties. Well, you get away with that now. It's a license to print money. And the Stones and the Who and those bands lost a fortune to music publishers. I mean, why would somebody think they're entitled to 50% of a song that you have written, something that you have created, for doing nothing other than collecting the money as it comes in? And that's what music publishers do. They're just a collecting agency. Well, now, of course, I mean, the artist makes themselves their own publishers and does the deal the other way around.
Does it themselves, yeah.
But, you know, there were lots of things like that where there were no kind of... because the Beatles opened the door into America through which everybody poured, gradually they got smarter, gradually they got better lawyers, better agents, better accountants, and they began to lose a lot less money. But for about 5 years, at least, I would think, they got ripped off unmercifully, those 60s bands, those huge groups, that some of whom are still around.
So you think one of the lasting impacts of the British invasion is the change in the business side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, I guess, for anything. The pioneers sometimes, you know, when they are the ones that get the biggest buffeting, you know, because they're the first through the door and everything is new. But gradually, you live and learn, you know, in any business. And if you don't live and learn, you don't live long. You know? So, I mean, you learn from bitter experience, as they say. And once they've been ripped off once or twice, you know, well, that's not going to happen again. Well, I mean, Jagger learned very fast, and he had to really. I mean, the Stones coming along a little bit later than the Beatles really benefited by the Beatles' experience, you know. Except, of course, when they managed to find Alan Klein together. That was a bit of genius. I don't know who recommended who to who. I think the story goes that Jagger recommended Klein to Lennon, I think. I'm not quite sure. I think that's the way it worked. Great. Good move, Mick. Still trying to get their publishing back. You know, America was so huge, and it was like kind of, you know, people think America sometimes is just like another country, but it's not. I mean, when you think England will fit into California very easily, you know, geographic size. You know, it's like playing in a continent that has got like 500 little Englands in it all over. That, I don't mean that they're like England, but I mean that size. You know, the size of England.
Mm.
And you break in one place, one side of the country, and you mean nothing the other. You know, I mean it's. And in those days, they were trying to do it by land all the time too, because it was cheaper to get a coach and whatever and tour around that way. You know, pretty soon it became Lear jets as the money started to improve. And the record sales, and also Freddie Laker had a lot to do with it. Freddie Laker Airways was the beginning of the cheap airline trips from London to America. Without Freddie Laker, there probably would have been no animals, no yardbirds, no who. They wouldn't have been able to afford to go to America.
Yeah, it's a valid point about compared to now when anyone can communicate across the world in seconds. It was like a different world, America. Always was, wasn't it?
Just it was far more expensive, comparatively speaking, as well. So, you know, Laker was the first one with budget-sized trips that you know they could get on and go into the States. You know. So that was really important too. And the other thing that the Beatles brought with them, of course, into America was the fashion thing that I was talking about before, because that was all changing. I mean, I mean, they looked different to anything that had gone before.
They didn't like their hair.
You know, they had different hairstyles, they had different dress, they had tag collars, they had those jackets without lapels and things, you know, and round collars, and I mean, all kind of sounds a bit twee now, but at that time it was a fashion statement that was saying, look, different, time for something different, you know. And the kids in America lapped it up and yeah, I'll take some of that, you know. And they grew their hair long, you know, and the Stones came along as well, and it got even shaggier and more kind of casual, and all the kind of stage clothes were thrown away. And there were kind of R&B stuff coming back too, which I mean they probably were responsible for. I mean there were bands like the Paul Butterfield Blues Band in the States, and Canned Heat, Bob Hyde, and Joplin, of course, Janis Joplin, and the
I mean, they were
holding
post-60s on the whole, weren't they? So you could say that because of the British invasion, it changed this big racial divide, and then you had great musicians in the 70s who loved the blues in America just as much as the British guys.
Yeah, it probably set in motion a few white guys rather than a few black guys.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
80s blues guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think if it was good for the Stones and the Beatles, it must be good for us. There was a bit of that going on, you know, as well, certainly. You know.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it opened people's eyes to, you know, where is this music coming from? It's right here on your doorstep, chummy. You know, you've just never been able to get to it. It's not been available. They wouldn't play it on your radio stations. You know, where do we get it? It's right here. You know. I remember going to see. I mean, it was amazing. It took much longer. Those black band artists were never really as accepted as they were in England and Europe, though, in America. I mean, it got better, but I mean, I can still remember going to see Bo Diddley in New York in 1980 with Rod Stewart. I was over there. I was doing Rod Stewart's PR at the time, and we had a nothing to do after the show, you know, and it was a late night show at Bo Diddley at this hall outside of Greenwich Village. So we thought, let's go see Bo Diddley. So we got cabs, and there was about 30 of us. We got there and went into the hall, paid our money. Could hear Bo Diddley playing away in the hall. Burst into the hall. There were 6 people there. And we went, we just took the place over. Danced on the tables, swung.
6 people seen.
He was never have I seen a black artist so pleased to see a bunch of white hooligans. He loved it, and of course we loved Bo Diddley, you know. So we were up on the stage, and you know, he was pulling out all the tricks. He was grinning away like
perfect example of someone with a big influence on the British guys, the 3-2 Clave.